madness and maybe the problems of his children. And this is Stephen Oates, and I guess he's a historian of Lincoln. He said, "Such prattle tells us more about Vidal than about Lincoln, for there is not a shred of truth in it." Now, this story, I guess the syphilis story, has sort of floated about. Why would you make such, I mean, is this not Gore Vidal picking out one thing and recreating Lincoln by selecting his facts?
Now, Pat, let's work on our verbs here. I don't emphasize this. I don't stress this. I mention this. It is part of the historical record. I've never read Mr. Oates, and I don't intend to read him now, because he is plainly not a historian, but some sort of hagiographer or publicist. He said there is not a shred of truth in this. Well, A, he doesn't know. B, it is a matter of record that William Herndon's Lincoln's law partner for 17 years, a man of great honesty, and if we don't believe Herndon, then there's no history for Lincoln before he's the president, because this is our only source. William Herndon, in words which I don't even paraphrase, I absolutely quote him. He said, "Lincoln told me that he contracted syphilis in 1836 or 7 in Beardstown, that he'd had a devilish passion for a girl, that it clung to him, and he didn't go to a doctor in Springfield because he was afraid they might talk, so he went over to Cincinnati to a Dr. Drake. Was he cured or not? Nobody knows in those days. We do know a few years later he was courting Mary Todd. Suddenly at the last minute he breaks off the engagement, eve of the wedding, has a nervous breakdown, tries to kill himself. Then, a year or so later, he does indeed marry her. First child dies very early. Second child is born malformed. Third child dies at 10. One of them is okay. Lived, as I said, a long time to be my grandfather's friend. That's all I do with it. Herndon then goes on to say, I have a theory.
So you think
why she went mad. I don't know. All I'm doing is I'm taking the record as it was,
right, but
as
look,
Herndon said.
I mean, you're someone that looks at historical facts. Do you believe Herndon?
I would say that Herndon has never been found inaccurate whenever he says, Lincoln told me. I mean, anything he himself heard or said. He worshipped Lincoln. He took down every note he could about Lincoln. Where Herndon goes wrong is later, after the president was killed. Herndon then went out and played Sherlock Holmes and tried to reconstruct his youth. And because Herndon couldn't stand Mary Todd Lincoln, he invented, pretty much, didn't invent, but he took a lot of rumors, the Anne Rutledge business, in which there's probably no truth in that.
Let me ask you something about literary figures.
Yeah.
When I was going to college, the name Faulkner and Hemmingway and Scott Fitzgerald, and I guess they're considered among the greatest of American writers. Of course, taking yourself out of the picture quite naturally. Do you think that any of the current writers...
That strikes me as most unnatural, but anyway.
All right, any of the current crop of writers are going to rank with those kinds of figures 40, 50 years from now?
Well, sure they will.
Who?
Well, I'd say Saul Bellow is certainly better than any of the ones that you've just mentioned.
Better than Hemingway and Fitzgerald?
Oh, I have a very low view of Hemingway. I mean, he's a sort of field and stream writer whose gift for publicity, has propelled him ever forward. He didn't develop. Fitzgerald wrote one perfect novel, which The Great Gatsby, but the rest of it was kind of sad.
Tender as the Night is not a good book?
Not to my mind. It has flashes. There's always
Hemingway,
something wonderful in him, but...
For Whom the Bell Tolls, things like that, that's field and stream?
I think Field and Stream, no, that's more Marie Corelli. I mean, that really is bad romantic fiction, and a very embarrassing book, which I think even he came to realize toward the end. Mind you, they made extremely good, serious, in quotes, movies, and perhaps he was, as a source of movies...
The Sun Also Rises,
No, I don't think there's much. I mean, all right, you want to talk about him, and how does he compare with Thomas Mann? How does he compare with Proust? How does he compare with James Joyce? These are all contemporaries.
Are there any moderns that compare with those that you're mentioning?
I think there's an Italian called Italo Calvino, who's probably the best novelist in the world.
Americans.
Of the Americans. Well, Field is a bit thin, but it was pretty thin 40 years ago. I don't think the novel really is our tradition anymore. I think our tradition now has shifted. In my lifetime, we were at the center stage, the novelist. poets had been pushed out there to one side. In my lifetime, I have watched the novelists being pushed off to the periphery, and what do we have at the center? We have the film auteur, which is one of the most ridiculous expressions on earth, but this is a movie culture. When I used to go around to colleges
Is any
30
great art
years
being
ago,
done in the movies, do you think? No.
probably the greatest single work of art, to my mind, in the last 30 years, and I've seen it, it's a film I've seen about 5 times, and that's Airplane.
How about Caligula?
And that's on the floor. It is one of the funniest movies ever made. Did you see it?
Yeah, I've seen it. Caligula, Mr. Vidal.
I never, you see, I did not see that.
How did you get hooked into that thing?
I wrote a script about Caligula, which was then taken away from me and was made by the people who give us those gynecological magazines like Penthouse it was, you know. I have never seen it, and I'm surprised, Mr. Braden, that you go to this sort of
I have not seen it. I've seen it advertised.
Oh, you've seen it?
I saw your name in connection with it. It seemed to me that you wrote it. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, I wrote a script long, long ago, but it does not say that I wrote it. That litigation saw to that.
Now,
Lincoln was Lincoln a good man?
Let me ask you about Buckley, as long as we put it out. Let's get it out.
Let's get it out,
Is
yeah.
Buckley a crypto-Nazi?
Oh, come on, Tom.
Oh, my.
Well, I'd like to know what he thinks.
What he thinks, but I told you I never say what I think on television. After all, if
apparently you did
I'm
once.
thinking, oh no, I was just joshing Bill.
All right.
He is a wonderful American.
And he sued you just as a big joke.
Yeah, he sued me, and now that you brought it up, do you realize that I was looking forward to going into court, and we were going to clobber him with a lot of very interesting material. And he dropped the suit 2 weeks before we were to go into court and declared a great victory. I happened to be out of the country, and so naturally it all went into the clips. But next time you see him. Yes, Mr. Buchanan?
I think we're out of time.
Oh, thank guest.
All right, we want to... Who wrote a book called Lincoln.